And also then we're going to talk a little bit about investing and career choices. So just beginning, God's view of money. We have to align our view on money and God's view of money. We need to align them together so that we can do what God wants us to do. So God says, "For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. For the world is mine and the fullness thereof." So God's view of money is he views everything as his. It's not ours, it's his. So that's the first thing we got to recognize is our resources aren't actually ours, they're his. And we're just stewards of them. So God owns everything, and then he can take it away and give it as he wills, right? So God will bless us when he wants to bless us. And Job found that out in Job 1:21. He said, naked I came into the world, and naked I shall return. And he knew that God ultimately is in control. And then also, we shouldn't be focusing our whole focus on our life about money, and that's all we care about. There's a balance there, a very fine balance, but it's important not to be just working to become rich. But wealth is a tool, and it's a very powerful tool. It can be used for many good things, but we have to make sure that we have a good balance on that. And so it says, why do we make ourselves miserable over something with a lousy track record for satisfaction? And basically, I like that little quote because many people make themselves miserable. They're trying so hard to save money, and they're not happy, and there never will be. And in Proverbs 23:5, it says, "Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven." And so money will never make you happy, certainly, and also you can't necessarily count on it. There's taxes and all kinds of things you can't control. And so you can't put your faith and your heart into money. And then also, we'll get into making money too. So it's not just all about not making money, but just a balance. So take heed, beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. So you can't measure yourself based on how much money you have, and you really can't base your happiness on that either. Very important. And then you'll never have enough if that's your view on money. So he that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. And vanity in Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes is like a vapor. It's like something you can't get your hands on. And that's how money is you think you're getting ahead, and then pretty soon you're not sometimes. So you can't be just satisfied with loving silver. And then being content. So we also got to, be happy with what we have. So let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he saith, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. So we can't trust, like we said, can't trust in riches, and we have to be content with what we have. Otherwise, we're going to have problems. And so with that, we're also going to talk a little bit about debt. And this is a very hot topic with some of the people have discussed this topic. But the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. And that's Proverbs 22:7. And I don't necessarily think that nobody can ever take a loan out, and I'm not going to tell people what they can and can't do. But I just think that in general, the borrower is servant to the lender, like the Bible says. And so a couple talking points is debt isn't always a true blessing. So I know that on the way to church, my family would always drive past this church, and it would say, financed by Bell Bank. And they had a huge addition going on. And basically, everybody could see that this bank had borrowed this church a bunch of money. And every time you drive past, it doesn't say, thanks God for providing our needs. It said, financed by, but huge sign. And so debt isn't always a blessing. Just because you can get stuff that you otherwise couldn't, it's not always a blessing. And it's not necessarily a true blessing from God. And it also can reflect definitely a lack of faith in God's provision, because if God wants to provide something, he can. He's got plenty of resources. And it also can, for a lot of people, it demonstrates discontentment. So they buy things that they shouldn't be buying, like a boat or something not that's wrong to buy a boat, but they'll buy it on credit. And so they end up paying a lot more for the boat because they're paying interest. But also, they're buying something that maybe is covetousness. They see how shiny it is, and they got to have it, and so they finance it. And it also can become a burden. And this is something that during COVID I saw for a lot of people, and I'd hear a lot of stories about people that they're getting coerced into doing things that they didn't want to do, take the vaccine or wear masks. And they would have maybe quit their jobs right then and there, but they had payments on their house, they had payments on their car, they had all these things. So debt can become a burden, and it causes financial strain, because basically you're not free to do whatever you want because you have payments you got to make. But at the same time, I don't think it's wrong to take a loan on a house to try to pay off a house or whatever. But just something to keep in mind is it's not necessarily a true blessing. And also, the other thing about saving and making money and being happy is He that loveth pleasure shall be a poor man, but he that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. And wine and oil is often in the New Testament, or like Old Testament, New Testament, as like a luxury item. A lot of people couldn't afford lots of oil and wine. And so basically what this verse is saying is if you really like to have luxury and fun and a lot of like stuff like that, it's going to hamper you from becoming wealthy and having plenty of money. And then lastly, giving. I really think that like God says we should be giving to him and giving back, even though it's already his. So he said in Malachi, bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now therewith, saith the Lord of hosts. If I will not open to you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. And he says, prove me, and prove me means try me. So God's saying, try it out. Give to me and see if I will not bless you. And this is not, and I do not like this when people think this, but giving to God is not a get-rich scheme. It's not I'm going to give 10% of my finances to God, and then he's going to multiply that, and then I'm going to give it back, and I'm going to, this isn't like that. No. And so, but if you give God your money and you do things that he wants you to do with your money, it's building your foundation on a rock. Because if you follow these last slides and use your finances as God's already told you to, then he can bless you as he sees fit. And I also think that you need to do our part. So that's part 3 right here, do our part. Because the problem is, people will say, well, if God wanted to make me rich, he would have made me rich. And there is an element of truth to that, but at the same time, you have to do your part. There's lots of things that you could be doing to create wealth, and you're not, or you might not be. And so you can't sit there and complain. And lastly, we should be saving money. So it says, for unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required. And the thing is God can give us whatever he wants, but if we aren't stewards of what we have already, how is he going to want to bless us more? So we really need to work on saving and being frugal. And then also, there's really 3 uses of money: giving, saving, investing, and then spending for pleasure. That's the 3 uses of money. So now I'm going to go into a little bit about compound interest, because if there's one thing you could come away from tonight, if you understood how compound interest works, this will be like worth it. So Benjamin Franklin said, money makes money, and the money it makes money makes money. And he was kind of being silly there a little bit, but he wanted people to understand that if you have money, it can grow, and you don't have to do anything to it, but it'll actually become an income on its own. And Albert Einstein said, compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. And what he's saying is if you understand compound interest, not just like, oh yeah, money makes money, but actually understanding it, you'll take advantage of that, and you'll make money on your own money, and you'll invest it wisely. But if you don't understand what he's saying, he says, he who doesn't understand it pays it. And that's because you'll make poor decisions that will cost you more money. And so just to illustrate this real quick, so my brother and I, we always laugh because people try to get us to buy stuff. And they're like, it's just like a weekly coffee. Well, first of all, we don't buy weekly coffees. But anyway, so I took $5 and I put it in if you invested $5 every week for 10 years at 12% interest. What you see is the graph of how it's growing. And the blue is what you're putting in, your contributions. But the green is what you're making. And after 10 years, you have $4,500 just from your weekly $5 coffee. $4,500 isn't that much, but it's a little chunk of change. But the thing is, your interest, the green, is money you didn't have to do anything. It just grew on its own. And it's almost half of what you contributions. But the green is what you're making. And after 10 years, you have $4,500 just from your weekly $5 coffee. $4,500 isn't that much, but it's a little chunk of change. But the thing is, your interest, the green, is money you didn't have to do anything. It just grew on its own. And it's almost half of what you contributed. So basically, you contributed half, and then the compound interest contributed half. And so another interesting thing about compound interest is this car. So this is a paper I have from when I was born in the early 2000s, and this car, brand new, was $13,893. Not that much in today's standards. But I want to show you, if you invested that money in the S&P 500, which is basically a bunch of stocks all combined together, if you invested in 2002 and let it grow till 2024 September, so just a couple months ago, you would now have $130,000. And I know it's kind of hard probably to see, but it's $130,000. So this $13,000 car, brand new, grew over 20 years to $130,000. Well, let me show you what the car looks like nowadays. Basically, this car, I have it, and it's out there, or it's not out there. But this car, I mean, you could have either had $130,000 now, or have that car if you were to buy that brand new. And I ask you, I can't make your decisions for you. I will not make anybody's decisions. But is that car worth $130,000? Because it's literally real numbers, like that car or $130,000. So Ian says he'll take the car. But I mean, it's not worth anything now at this point. So what I'm trying to illustrate is that, it's not that you can't buy a nice car. It's not that you can't spend money. But do think about how much things would grow if you were just to put it in the stock market or invest it in some sort of in money-making thing. And then also we're going to talk a little bit about paying off your house. So there's a couple different things, and I've never had a loan, so I can't really speak to this directly from personal experience, but my parents did. And I'm going to illustrate, this is a loan for a house, and I put in $400,000, 30-year loan at 6% interest, which is a little high, but not too far off from what we were at. And what you'll see is, if you spend $400,000 on a house over 30 years at that percentage interest, you end up paying $863,000. So you pay over double what the house would have cost if you paid outright for it. So this is why it exactly illustrates why I don't like having loans on things, is because I don't like giving the bank money that they just get to keep. And I like to keep my money and make it work for me. Now, there's a lot of people who say, well, I can invest the money at 10% interest in the stock market and yada yada yada. And I'm not saying that you can't have debt and stuff. And a lot of people I know have done very well by leveraging debt, but I think that it can become a problem very quickly. And so to illustrate this is an amortization schedule. I don't know how many people here know what that is, but basically when you have a loan on your house, you pay the same payment every month, but the payment goes to something different every month. It slowly changes. So at the beginning, you're paying mostly interest on your house. Very little of it actually goes to paying the house off at the beginning. So the first month you pay $2,000 to the bank, and then $400,000 to the bank, but that goes to your actually paying the house off. Well, the way it works is if you have a loan at the early time and you pay $400 and then pay this green, so that's 3 months worth of payments, right? So if you made 3 extra payments, the $400, you're making the equivalent of $6,000, all the red. So basically by paying early, the green, you get the red back, which is pretty good. Now, later on in your investment, you'll see that the $400 becomes less or more. And as you get on into your loan, paying off early doesn't help you as much because you're not paying off the principal. So just something to think about, like if you do have a loan, paying off early is going to help you not pay the interest. And then lastly, kind of mapping out your dreams. So one of the things is a lot of people, maybe they get frustrated with people that are too cheap or too frugal. And one thing I think I'd like to remind people is that if you have a dream, what you can do is have a dream, create a plan, and then set your goals, and then execute it. It's pretty simple. And if you have a dream that you really think is important, like this guy, he wants to climb the mountain, he's going to have to make some sacrifices. He's not going to climb up that mountain without making some sacrifices on having to breathe hard because it's hard to breathe up there. He's going to have to bring food with on backpacks. Like just when you have something you want to do, you're going to have to make sacrifices. But when you know what your dreams are, it's easy to realize them and make sacrifices and say, no, I'm not going to spend this much money on this thing that I don't really need that much because I want to pay off a house and I want to have a nice house where I can have volleyball and parties and stuff, whatever. So it's just important to have your dreams in mind and what you can do, because otherwise the sacrifices become so burdensome. And then a final word on investing, and this is what I do for investing, is I do what they call dollar cost averaging. And basically, it's you set a certain amount you want to put in every week, and it automatically does it. You set it and forget it. So when I invest, I don't care what the stock prices are. I don't care anything about that because I'm just letting it go. And this is one way you can become rich by being lazy. You just set your investments and let them go and just forget about them. And then you can schedule it so you can skip certain months or certain weeks, and set it and forget it. So I definitely recommend doing this because it takes the emotion out. When the stocks go up, it's like the stocks are up. I'm making money. I should buy more. But that's not when it's a good time to buy more. It's always a good time to buy more when stocks are down. But when they're down, you're like, oh, my money's down. It's not worth as much, so I don't want to buy anymore. So it takes the emotion out of it. You just set your automatic investments. And then lastly, we're going to talk briefly about careers. Some people maybe would accuse me of being somebody that says everybody should go to college. I definitely don't think college is for everybody. But what I think you definitely need is a vision. Get a vision, and then do what you like, and then do what you're good at, and then improve. If you do those 4 things, you'll be successful no matter what you do. And so you have to go where God leads you, and that's the most important thing. And generally, you're going to be good at what you like doing. So just keep that in mind. And lastly, as far as occupations go, some occupations have a very hard barrier to entry, so they're hard to get into. So I have 3 different examples, and these are I pulled their average wages right from the Bureau of Labor Statistics from the government website, and they're saying that the median wage for dental hygienists is $93,000, median for pharmacists is $150,000, and welders and brazers is $55,000 a year. And these are gross income. And so what I did is an experiment. If you went to, typically a pharmacist is 8 years of school. Typically, like a dental hygienist is about 3 years of school. So I took these numbers, assumed that they saved 100% of their gross income, no taxes. And just to illustrate this, so no taxes, they live off nothing. If you take that and you invest it, this is what happens. So as you can see on the graph, basically, for the first 8 years, the pharmacist is in school, making payments on their loans, going to school, and they're not making any money. Where the welder gets to start making money right away. And the dental hygienist has to go 3 years of school, and then they start making money. What happens is the welder goes for 8 years before the actual dental hygienist even catches up on investment money. And then the pharmacist goes for 30 years before he finally makes back all that money of those wasted years of 8 years. Because the whole point is saving now, your money can just grow. And it can grow, and the longer you leave it in, the longer it'll grow, right? So this illustrates that your barrier to entry, if a job takes a lot of schooling or if the job takes a lot of money and capital, that money could be used for some investing purposes, and it could be growing. So it's just really, really important to know that if you have money and you invest it, that's one of the ways to make money. And then also just realizing money's not everything. Money won't make you happy, and you can't count on money being a fulfilling thing. So that's it. I'm done.
All right. Thanks, Joseph. He set the standards pretty high for me. I don't normally give presentations, so bear with me. It's going to be rough. So real quick about me, I'm Isaac Coop. I grew up in Becker, Minnesota. I'm also an electrical engineer. Went to the same school as Joseph and Titus. Currently, I'm employed at Ingeos Geotechnics. I'm married and have a 3-month-old daughter. So enough about me. It's not like guys actually care about my resume. We'll get to the real stuff, though, the real reason why you guys are here. And I want to ask, do you like paying more for groceries? Do you like paying more for gas? Do you like that your favorite car is priced higher than it was 3 years ago? These ideas are going to sound absurd. You're going to think, Isaac, what are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. I'm going to tell you, if you're able to understand the ideas that I'm going to talk about today, you'll be the first out of thousands to understand what's happening today. And you'll have prosperity and power in your hands. And today, I'm going to be talking about Bitcoin. And I'm not going to be talking about all the cryptography and the math and how to mine Bitcoin and how to set up your own node, but rather we're talking about the fundamentals, why it's so important today. And so I'm going to start off with technology and poverty. The baseline of humanity was poverty. Everybody at some point was in some kind of poverty. 4 out of 5 people were in poverty. And technology over time makes things cheaper for us. And we can see here in the chart, going back the last 200 years, the absolute destruction in purchasing power, or in poverty. Especially in the last 50 years, the destruction in poverty is just accelerating. And this should make everybody happy. And so as technology makes things cheaper, more efficient, we have more. There's more prosperity. Like, for example, lighting. We have fire. We start off with fire. Then we go to candles. And then we have oil lamps. And now we have lights. Now we have advanced light bulbs. It just gets cheaper and easier and more efficient. And today we have all kinds of food. You have more food today than kings did 100 years ago. Like, look at your house. You have heating. You have cooling. You have a fridge. You have microwaves. You don't even have to do your dishes anymore. That's how prosperous we are today. And so technology makes poverty go down. And with that, we should see prices go down over time. But then that begs the question, how come everything and anything is at all-time highs? How come everything is priced higher than it was a few years ago? So what's wrong? And the problem is our cash leaks energy faster than what technology is able to accomplish. And so here I have the British pound going back to 1209, 800 years of data. And you can see it looks like the last 500 years was the majority of the crash. But you zoom in on the last 100 years, it's even worse. It lost even another 99% of its value. And so the thing is, these are open systems. They're always leaking energy. There's always energy loss. There's always dilution. And kind of like you have orange juice and you're constantly pouring water into that cup of orange juice. Eventually, there's no more orange juice in there. And the reason we do this is, the reason why we have energy leak in cash is because we don't want to have a credit collapse. If we don't want to see that. People that we could imagine, like if you have debt, it'll only get harder for you to pay it off because things are getting cheaper. And so we would rather have energy leak faster than technology, and this is why we have higher prices over time. And so we print and we break ledger. We create value out of nothing. We're literally breaking physics here. We're doing 1 + 1 = 5, and we live in that kind of world today. And we prefer stable prices over a stable system. We tolerate an annual rate of fraud, essentially. It's a harsh word to say, but essentially you're creating value out of nothing. That's physically impossible. You cannot do that. You cannot create gold out of nothing. That's impossible. Yet we like to believe that we could get value out of nothing. And so we have technology trying to lower prices, and that's literally my job. As an engineer, I'm supposed to lower prices for the company. And so this violation of physics is why we have prices going up over time. And we try to earn yield on our money to compensate for this loss. And again, these are open systems, and open systems leak energy from an engineering perspective.
Can you explain leak energy? What kind of energy are you talking about?
Yeah. So, for example, you have cash today. You have a certain amount of cash, and the government decides to print more cash. So where does that value come from? It's creating value out of nothing. That's energy leak. You're diluting the current cash value. So same with gold. It leaks energy over time because we're able to mine more. Things are more efficient. We're able to dig further, faster. We're able to produce more. And that's where the dilution is the energy leak. And so to illustrate this further, we have our stock market here. The squiggly line is the stock market, and the blue line is the money supply. Clearly, stock market only goes up because of more dollars in circulation. There's no real value created there. And we illustrate it further here on the black chart. The red is the stock market divided by money supply. You can see it's flat for the last 50, 60 years. Your stock market hasn't gone anywhere the last 50, 60 years. It's only your dollars got devalued. And you can see the green is your stock market in dollars, and the blue is how much dollars are in circulation. And so what if we were able to create a closed system where there is no dilution, there is no energy leak? So a system like this would absorb and store energy over time. And open systems have a half-life. So eventually, over a certain amount of time, you get diluted by 50%. For example, for gold, it's about 60 years. And so we can imagine a satellite that's in orbit, if it has decay, eventually at some point it's going to crash to Earth. Whereas if it has no decay, it'll stay in orbit forever, theoretically. So if you were to put units on top of this closed energy system, you essentially create the perfect money, the ideal money. And visionaries have predicted this, like Henry Ford. He tried creating his own energy money system, but he ended up failing because he didn't have the infrastructure set up for that. And so what does a system like this look like today? So we need something to transfer energy. We will need to turn that energy into information. And we need to transfer that energy across space and somehow retain that information where it cannot be diluted. So essentially what we have here for transferring energy, you got the electric grid. Turning that energy into information, which is computers, it turns ones, zeros, and then you could get text and all your calculations and data. And then transfer the energy across space, which is the internet. And then we have the Bitcoin software that makes it permanent, that monitors the dilution, which there is no dilution in Bitcoin. So essentially what's happening here is you have energy that is being stored into a finite number of units. So you're essentially taking energy and converting it into money. And so we have infinite of everything. We have infinite cash, we have infinite amount of labor, we have infinite amount of stocks, land, real estate, metals, food. Thank goodness we have more food. Prosperity also. Yet we only have 21 million coins. We have infinite everything, but only a finite number of coins. And to illustrate this absurdity of getting things for free, the banks no longer need to have your money in reserves. They literally don't have your money. They just lend it out automatically right away. That's how this is. We love this idea of free. And we have infinite amount of debt. Every single year, we're adding more and more debt to the national debt. We also have stock dilution. We're able to dilute shareholders. We have more gold discovery happening. And this is going to sound absurd. Asteroid mining. This sounds absurd now, but think about the person that rode a horse all his life. He thought the train was absurd. How can a chunk of steel be faster, better, more efficient than my horse? And we have infinite amount of resources in space. And we're building humanoid robots. And we have infinite intelligence. We have AI today. And we also have infinite energy consumption. And this is going to sound absurd, but everything falls against Bitcoin. And so we could say this, we could kind of illustrate this here with oxygen and Mona Lisa, where you will die without oxygen within 5 minutes, yet nobody pays for oxygen because there's just so much of it. Whereas the Mona Lisa, you're not going to die if you don't see it, but you will pay to go see it, and people pay to go see it. And so we take open systems and divide it by a closed system, that'll give you infinite price. So you take oxygen, open system, divided by Mona Lisa, you get infinite. So you take infinite divided by finite equals infinite. And so Bitcoin here is the Mona Lisa. There's only so much coins available, and it's finite. And in the future, this is going to sound crazy, but in the future, to not own Bitcoin is going to be like selling oxygen to your neighbors, because we're just going to have so much homes, we're just going to have so much of everything. Where not owning Bitcoin is going to be a bad idea, because everything is going to be falling, everything falls to zero. And to illustrate this absurdity, we have rent against Bitcoin, it's just going to zero. We have gold against Bitcoin, it's going to zero. We have S&P 500, it's going to zero. US dollar, the worst of all, going to zero. And a lot of people don't understand this. The energy usage of Bitcoin is a good thing. The more energy that Bitcoin uses, the more energy that's locked up in these finite units. And the finite supply of it is a good thing, because you will not be diluted over time. And the thing is, a lot of people look at Bitcoin and they think, oh, it's so volatile. But really, it's looking from Bitcoin perspective out onto these open systems. The real volatility comes in these open systems. Bitcoin's flat. It has only 21 million coins. That's it. Is these other systems that are, the supply and demand is always changing and going crazy. And it's outside of human control. That's another good thing, where there isn't somebody that can be corrupted to dilute. And the thing is, we've never seen a finite system like this. And so now we're transitioning from this old paradigm to a new paradigm. So in the old paradigm, our money goes down, and our assets go up, and we save in assets, and we diversify with our institutions and trust that they will buy the right assets. And we're now transitioning to the new paradigm where our money goes up, and our assets go down. And you save in money, which is how it always should have been. You should have always been saving in money, not in a third home that you're never going to live in. And we no longer need to trust the institutions. You can just go verify that nobody's diluting you. And so we have, in our current system, we have infinite money, which leads to finite assets. And we're now transitioning into finite money, and we have infinite assets. And so adoption of Bitcoin is happening fast, 80% faster than the internet. The hash rate, which is the computing power, is at all-time highs. Distribution is at all-time highs. Addresses is at all-time highs. So all the key metrics are at all-time highs. People trade it like a tech stock. They're mistaking it. Bitcoin is turning energy into monetary units. People are not understanding it. People think it's like tech stock, but it's like selling your train because stagecoach valuations are down. That's kind of absurd. The train obliterates the horse. The horse cannot compete. And so do not be left behind. What happens when companies start raising infinite amount of stock to buy Bitcoin? What happens when nations get infinite amount of debt to buy these coins? And what happens when a nation says, our fiat currency is going to zero already, we'll just print it to infinity already and just buy a bunch of Bitcoin with it? And what happens when they hold for 1,000 years? Do not wait until it's safe. You're going to be left behind. Stop using the horse. Start using the train. And to illustrate how scarce Bitcoin is, there's about 3-4 million coins left to be claimed. What happens when 4 out of 65 million millionaires decide to buy one? That's all the coins. What happens when 400 out of 100 million companies decide to buy 10,000 coins for their reserves? What happens when 4 countries out of 200 decide to buy 1 million coins for their reserves? And now what happens when everybody decides to go at once? There's simply not enough coins to be claimed. And so a majority of people will only ever see $50 worth of Bitcoin in their lifetime. Imagine, you're working all your life to only get $50 worth of Bitcoin today. That's how scarce Bitcoin is. And you're going to laugh. Bitcoin is going to $100 million. Is because, and it's not crazy to say, because there's infinite amount of dollars, there's infinite amount of everything, and finite number of Bitcoin. It's going up forever. All energy will go from these open systems to this closed system. So all energy will go from gold, real estate stocks, into Bitcoin. So again, like I said, stop pricing in the train in horses. We're thinking like, how much horses is my train worth? That's crazy to think like that. One train is probably worth 100 million horses. It doesn't make sense. It's not working. And so Bitcoin is perfect game theory. And so I encourage everybody to get something, just a little bit, just so that you're not left behind. And it doesn't need to be significant. Like I said, only $50 worth is what someone will be working all their life for. And I'm sure a lot of us could throw $50 away and not even notice. And with that, I'm signing off.
Well, hello, my name is Brian Bessingpass. I'll introduce my family. My wife Lindsay is over there, and then our oldest is Annika, Micah, Luke, Matthew, and Andrew. So I don't know, I kind of had Noah asked me about this, and I wasn't really sure what to prepare for you guys. So some of this might be a little repetitive to what was said earlier, especially out of some of the things that our first presenter mentioned, but just things that I think are important to looking back in life and helping kids get off to a good start. These are just probably just pretty practical, common sense things, probably nothing that nobody here doesn't already know, but maybe just a good reminder, maybe something that, you guys, look here, how many people are homeschooled? Most people here, right? So you're all smarter than I was, okay? I was a public school kid, so right off the bat, you got the advantage. You probably don't make a lot of these mistakes I'm going to talk about. On top of that, a lot of your parents I know, and I'm guessing they've had conversations along these lines with you. So if this isn't something you can grab onto, maybe it's somebody that you're going to be interacting with on a job. A lot of times spouses come into a marriage, they've got very different upbringings, and it's good just to get some of these things on the table, realizing that the home they grew up in might not be the same type of home that you grew up in, right? One of the things that Lindsay and I did when we got married that was super helpful is we took a Dave Ramsey course. I don't know if you guys have heard of Dave Ramsey before. Just very common sense stuff, but it was super helpful. And there was some things in there that I definitely learned, but I think the good thing for us is it was just a framework to go through and talk about some stuff that sometimes is hard for people to talk about. Especially if you're, like I said, coming from different places and different homes and stuff. But one thing that I think is super important for you guys that I would highly recommend all of you to do is just have some money that's set aside that you're just not going to touch until there's truly an emergency. Life happens. You're gonna see this one day when you're married. There's going to be money spent on things that you can't even imagine that you're spending money on. Your kid might break their leg, right, kind of when you're splitting wood. Who knows what it is. You got unexpected trips to the emergency room. You're headed down to Children's Hospital. Your house that you're trying to sell that's supposed to sell in a week for this big bucks, it might take 8 months. You just don't know what's going to come at you. So I would encourage you guys to do that. Dave Ramsey back in the day said $1,000. That's probably a great starting point. Adjusted for inflation now, guys, I think honestly, I probably would recommend doing more than that. For you younger guys out there that are looking to maybe be married at some point, I mean, this should be like, not like my $1,000 saved up to buy the ring for the girl, but like, separate, right? Have that so after you buy the ring, you still got that left over because you're going to need it, right? Those things are going to happen. I think a big thing about it is that, you got to spend some time thinking about not so much what to do, but what not to do. And one of the things you desperately don't want to do is just fall into the credit card trap. It's a sick game. Like, you're going to lose and you're never, ever going to get ahead if you are one of those people that's not paying your credit card off every month. The interest rate that you pay on that stuff is unbelievable. Just some quick examples here. Like, I just looked up a few facts, but the average American has somewhere, I saw different numbers, but $7,000 to $8,000 in credit card debt. The average interest rate is like somewhere between 20 to 25% on that. You're not going to win at that. That's just so stacked against you. So basically what a credit card is going to allow you to do is get something that you probably don't have any business buying, right? That's just the reality of it. You're going to buy something that you don't have cash on hand to pay for. So just calculate the cost, do the math. Like, you make $1,000 purchase. If you only pay the minimum payments on that, that's going to be like well over $2,100 by the time you're done paying for that $1,000 thing. So lots of verses in the Bible talk about this, but just it's kind of going back to the contentment thing that they talked about earlier. And I'm not even necessarily saying don't buy that thing, but just wait, right? Delayed gratification, wait, save, Don't put it on credit. Buy it when you can get it. So, that money set aside helps avoid that. That's, it's not always just people, like when you get to my age, it's not always just like, man, I really want that new gun. I'm going to go out there and buy that. I don't have it right now, but I really want it. I got this Cabela's card. I can go get it. They're going to give me some points back, whatever, right? Because the reality of it is like if I didn't have some money set aside when Andrew broke his leg last year, we probably would have had to put some of that on the credit card, right? And then you're stuck into that. It's not always a lack of control on your spending. It's just sometimes life happens. So I would set some stuff aside. I think that's a great plan. The third thing that I was going to mention is, some of you guys may choose to go to school outside of the public school or in the public school world, kind of, I don't know, post-secondary options, college, whatever it is. Just think through that. That was a great slide a little while ago that we were looking at, just talking about the amount of money that people make. That's one thing to look at, but yeah, look at the time and the money that's involved to get to that point. And there's a lot of earning years that you're going to miss out on if you're in school for a long time. Quick little story that I thought about, some of you know, but I'm a public school teacher. There's a teacher that I teach with. I'm on the same team. We're roughly the same age. We roughly started teaching at the same time. She went to a big fancy private school to get the same degree I did, to go to the same school that I teach in, to teach at the same grade and probably make about the same amount of money, all right? So she just came in like 2 years ago. So this probably would have been 24 years into her teaching career and celebrating, yeah, I paid off my student loans. And I was like, oh, wow. It's shocking though. Like it's a real thing. It's a debt. You got to pay it back, right? And it takes a long time. So just, I'm not saying not to do it. I think there's a lot of places where that's appropriate, but just explore all those other avenues, like that post-secondary stuff that you can maybe do, or collect stuff, whatever you can do to keep that stuff down, because debt is debt. I think another thing that I see people do is with just putting money in stuff that goes down in values. I think the big thing is cars, obviously, right? I mean, you can get a payment on a used car. You can get a payment on a new car. I've never purchased a new car in my life. I go and park in our high school parking lot every day. I probably have one of the top 10 worst cars in that lot right there. But you know what? It gets me there. It gets me back. It's a 2006. We're pushing 300,000 miles on it. But you know what? I don't have to pay for an insurance on it. I mean, right? I don't have collision on it. So that's a savings there. All those little things that they get you on the sticker, that has a little year on the back, that's a lot less money when you are driving an old vehicle too. All of that stuff is just good things to think about. But, like with vehicles too, like if you're gonna borrow money on that, second you drive it off the lot, they're saying it's gonna go down 10% in value. So you're borrowing on something. It's not like a house where it's probably going to get sold at a later date for more. And this is kind of what you were talking about before too. The second you drive it off the lot, you've already lost 10% on it. And then it says, basically, what I was seeing here is that the value is going to roughly go down 15% per year. So you're going to be, at some point, you're gonna owe almost immediately more on this car than what it's worth. And that's kind of a scary spot to be in. One thing to owe some money on a house that's worth more than what you paid it for, but to owe money on a car that's worth less than what you bought it for, it's probably not real wise. Next thing I was going to talk about too, I think Noah's called it side hustles before, but start early. Just work. Like when you're not tied down, right now I'm trying to work less because I have a wife and I have kids and I need to be home. And I should be home, and that's the right place for me to be. But in those years leading up to that, I was working, like they'd say, teaching is a full-time job. I was coaching, which if anybody's had aspirations of doing that, that's basically another full-time job. And then valet parking cars on top of that. I mean, a lot of weeks, I probably worked 70, 80 hours a week before I got married to Lindsay. But what that allowed me to do that whole time, I just kept having that thought is like, I could be doing something else right now, but what is your goal? And somebody had talked about that earlier this year too, or this tonight talking, like, what is your goal? I mean, if you really want to get to the point where you want your wife to stay home, what are you going to do about that right now? And I just put in as much time as I could, made as much as I could, saved as much as I could. Next thing that I was going to talk about here too is I'm sure a lot of you guys grew up in the country, kind of more, not like in town, but out in the country, and that's awesome. That was our dream too. That dream just happened for us. I was 46 years old when I got 5 acres and a house in the country. And that's something too, like you want that, and you look at the stuff, you're looking at realtor.com, those prices are like unbelievably high. It's huge. So our story is, and why I think a lot of it is why we were able to get there, is that we both lived in town. Before we got married, we had small little places in town, sold them, but you know what? We made a little bit of money. And then we got married, and we bought another house in town, but then when we sold that, we made a little bit more money. And it just kind of kept going like that. So I think sometimes you come to a place like this and you're like, wow, they're out in the country, this is what I want. And yes, it is what you want, but it's going to probably take a while to get there, is all I'm trying to say. And don't be afraid to start in town, something else. And even maybe you're not going to sell it, maybe you just buy it, but then that becomes a rental property that you're going to use down the road. What else? Coming after the Bitcoin guy here, I'll make appeal for you guys to use cash. I think that's kind of one of Dave Ramsey's things too. Like, if you have it in your hand, you're not going to spend more than what you have. I try to use that when we do transactions. I also like that in this day and age. I noticed during COVID, there was a huge push to go paperless. You guys have heard about the... Sorry, I got a really bad cold. CD, BC stuff, right? They're like the globalists are trying to get something for everybody to use, right? I don't know. Everything's tracked that you do an electronic transaction with too. So to me, it's just I just want to give somebody some money, and I don't really want people tracking what we're doing. So I think there's a variety of reasons to do that, but I think it would be cool. There's places where you go to where if you do not pay with a credit card, they're going to give you a discount for using cash, which is kind of a cool thing. The credit card company makes money every time you use the card, even if you pay it off. So I don't know if you guys knew that before, but it's like they charge those places 3%. So even if you have a rewards card and you're getting 1% back, every time you use that, you're giving the big bankers 2%. So they're getting really, really rich. So that's something else maybe to think about. Another thing too, and I'm not going to say don't invest in Bitcoin, but I think a Dave Ramsey thing too that I think is wise is don't invest in stuff that you don't understand. And if you want to do that stuff, that's awesome, but just learn about it, right? Because there's a lot of mistakes. I don't think there's an investment out there where you can't lose things really, really quickly if you don't know what you're doing. There's times to get into it. There's times to get out of it. There's just a whole lot of considerations. So I guess what I would just say is try to understand it, find somebody that's doing whatever it is that you want to invest in, and just learn from them. Ask a lot of questions, make sure you're comfortable with it, because one of the things you don't want to do when you're trying to invest and make money is lose money, all right? Another thing here too, if you get to the point where you got some extra money, I like to invest in things that I think are real. It's a Robert Kiyosaki fact here, but 90% of U.S. millionaires own real estate. It's a good tool because it's a real thing. That I think is a good thing. I'm not a big stock market guy at all. I think there's just a lot of fees in that they always show you all the things, and it's going to be your money's going to keep going like this. But then when you keep getting that statement 10 years later, it'll go up. I mean, it has gone up. I can't say that, but there's a lot of stuff in there that is less than appealing when reality sets in. So just, again, understand that stuff. Last thing, too, was kind of covered before, too, but just give. I think that's probably the most important thing out of anything that I heard tonight, is that just realize, I mean, it's not here to make us rich. It's not here to make our lives easier, although it can, but just give it back. And I think the reality of it is that the longer I'm alive, I think the more I realize that it's not even necessarily me doing the job or anything special that I did to get the job in the first place. God has just given us just so much. And for us to only be asked really to give back 10% of it is probably about the least we can do. But it's not at all that God needs it. It's just more for us too, right? Just to realize that He is the one providing all of that. That's all I got.
That was great, hearing all of your guys' different angles on this, all you three. Joseph, what you said, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, that really, I think, is probably the most important if we can learn that, that's the most important thing, okay? Our stuff isn't our stuff, and I like what you said. I think it was John Wesley who said, make all you can, save all you can, so you can what? Give all you can.